For the first time, we're really getting a clear picture of how frontier AI is actually being adopted out in the real world. A brand new dataset, the Anthropic Economic Index, is mapping out exactly who is using these powerful tools, where they are, and what they're using them for. And believe me, the patterns it's revealing are absolutely critical for understanding the economic future we are building right now.
To really wrap our heads around the scale of what's happening, we need a little historical context. So think about it. Transformative technologies always take time to spread. Electricity took something like 30 years to really become widespread. Even the internet, which felt like it happened overnight, took about 5 years to get to the adoption rates that AI has hit in just 2. This speed is completely, utterly unprecedented, and that's exactly why understanding these early patterns is so important.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the unprecedented nature of this adoption. Then, we'll see how the usage itself is changing. From there, we'll actually map the geography of adoption, before we drill down into how tasks are specializing by region. And finally, we're going to tackle the big one. What does this all mean for global economic inequality?
Okay, let's get into the fundamental pattern here, because while the speed is brand new, the shape of this adoption curve is actually following a classic, pretty predictable playbook for new tech.
Here's the key insight. New technologies, they just don't spread evenly like butter on toast. They pool. They concentrate in very specific regions and for very specific tasks. We've seen this movie before with every major technological shift. The only difference now is that AI is following this exact same pattern, but on a dramatically compressed timeline.
So if we know adoption is concentrating, the next logical question is how is that usage evolving within those concentrated groups? Well, by tracking user interactions over the last 8 months, the report shows some really significant shifts in behavior.
This chart shows a fascinating trend, a real shift away from general business operations towards more knowledge-intensive work. I mean, if you just follow the data here, you can see a clear downward trend for tasks like business and management. But on the flip side, look at the rising lines for categories like education, science, and computer science. This suggests that AI is rapidly becoming a go-to tool for complex problem solving, not just for, routine office work.
Now, within this evolving usage, the report identifies 2 really distinct ways people interact with the AI. First, you've got augmentation. That's a collaborative back and forth where the user and the AI are kind of working together. The second is automation. This is where the user just issues a command, a directive, and delegates the whole task to the AI. And this distinction, it's absolutely critical for understanding what's coming next.
And this chart, wow, this is where you see that massive shift in action. Just look at the data here. Over just 8 months, pure automation, those directive conversations, skyrocketed from about a quarter of all interactions to nearly 40%. For the very first time, automation has actually surpassed augmentation as the dominant interaction. This signals a huge growth in user trust and, of course, model capability as people are getting more and more comfortable just handing entire tasks over.
Okay, so we've seen how usage is changing, but where is all this actually happening? While the geographic distribution is maybe the most consequential finding in this entire report. At a glance, this world map confirms our central theme, concentration, right? The darkest colors, representing the highest tiers of AI adoption, are clustered heavily in North America, Western Europe, and parts of East Asia. Meanwhile, you've got these vast regions of the globe showing pretty minimal usage. But to truly understand this disparity, we've got to look at the per capita data.
And to do that, the analysis uses a metric they call the Anthropic AI Usage Index, or AUI. It's simple, but it's really powerful. It basically compares a country's share of global AI usage to its share of the global working-age population. So an AUI over 1 means a country is punching way above its weight in AI adoption. An AUI below 1 means it's punching below. And when we rank countries by this AUI metric, the pattern gets even sharper. The leaders aren't necessarily the biggest economies, but the small, nimble, and technologically advanced ones. Israel is the real standout, using AI at a rate 7 times higher than you'd expect for its population. And it's followed by hubs like Singapore and Australia, likely because their economies are already heavily skewed towards the kind of knowledge work where these tools have an immediate, obvious application. Now, zooming out, this scatter plot reveals the powerful underlying driver of adoption. On the horizontal axis, you've got income per capita. On the vertical, the AI usage index. The correlation here is just unmistakable, and it is incredibly strong. The richer a country is, the more its citizens use AI. It's that simple.
And we can actually quantify that relationship pretty precisely.
It turns out that for every 1% increase in a country's GDP per capita, there's an associated 0.7% increase in its per capita AI usage. This shows a powerful, direct link between existing economic advantage and the adoption of this new technology.
And this pattern of concentration doesn't just hold true between countries, it's happening within them as well. In the US, for example, you might expect Silicon Valley's California to lead, right? But it doesn't. When you adjust for population, Washington, D.C. and Utah are the clear leaders. This suggests adoption isn't just about big tech hubs, but about the concentration of specific knowledge-based industries.
So this brings us to the next layer of the analysis. We know where AI is being used, but now we can actually see what it's being used for in those different places.
What's really fascinating here is that as a region's AI adoption matures, its usage diversifies. You can see it so clearly in the data. On the left side of these charts, in the low adoption regions, usage is totally dominated by one category, computer science, basically coding. But as you move to the right, as a country's AUI goes up, that dominance fades and usage spreads out into fields like education, administration, and even the arts.
And this slide illustrates brilliantly how local economies shape AI use. I mean, just take India and Brazil. India, a global IT powerhouse, disproportionately uses AI for software development. No surprise there. Brazil, on the other hand, has been an early adopter of AI in its judicial system, and its top uses totally reflect that, with a huge focus on legal assistance and translation. The technology is literally being molded to fit the local economic landscape. So let's pull all these threads together. We have rapid but concentrated adoption, a strong link to national income, and local economic specialization. This brings us to the final and, I think, most critical question. What does all of this add up to for the global economy?
For the past few decades, the global economy has seen this wonderful trend of convergence, where poorer countries have generally been catching up to richer ones. The deep concern this data raises is whether AI, by concentrating its benefits in already wealthy nations, could stop that progress in its tracks, or even reverse it.
Now, this data doesn't give us all the answers, but what it does is it allows us to ask the right questions with a clarity we've never had before. What will this uneven adoption do to local labor markets? What are the real barriers holding back adoption in developing nations? And most critically, what policies can we even imagine that could ensure the immense productivity gains from AI are shared globally and not just hoarded? And this is the thought I really want to leave you with. This isn't just some academic question. If these early adoption patterns become entrenched, we might be witnessing the beginning of a great economic divergence, where the most powerful technology of our time flows primarily to those who are already ahead. The challenge for all of us now is to understand this dynamic and figure out how to shape a more equitable future. See you in the next one. Subscribe, like, and comment.